Discover the amazing ways early humans overcame predators. 7 incredible survival secrets exposed. The headline loomed on the screen like a siren call, haunting Jake as he sat in his cluttered classroom, papers piled high like a grim mountain blocking his path. He felt like an ancient relic among the shiny, bright-eyed students thriving in a world that promised wealth and opportunity, and he was stuck grappling with their straining futures. They lived in comfort and privilege, while he trudged through endless grading, haunted by the realization that his efforts were dwarfed by the successes of his peers and the affluence surrounding him. In that moment, a fleeting thought flickered: what if the very tactics of survival that had allowed early humans to thrive against predators could somehow apply to his classroom? If those ancient warriors had mastered teamwork and ingenuity, perhaps there was a spark yet untapped within his own students. But then the doubt crashed over him like a frigid wave. Who was he to change their fate? The school administration prided itself on raising test scores, not inspiring. His chest tightened at the thought of approaching the higher-ups, armed with ideas that might seem like fanciful dreams. Just another failing attempt to rise above the stifling system. He mechanically read through stacks of essays, each paper a stark reminder of the limitations imposed on his teaching methods. Jake's internal conflict grew. What would happen if he shifted his teaching style? If he ventured to propose a survival simulation? The anger pulsed in his veins. Should a passionate approach be squashed for the sake of numbers? He clutched a pencil tightly, memories of his mentor's voice echoing in his mind. Stick to the curriculum, Jake. Creativity leads nowhere. A scorching embarrassment flushed over him as he recalled his mentor's recent disapproval of his progressive ideas. The tension threatened to suffocate him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each minute ticking by, the weight of the doubts pressed harder. He couldn't help but envision the rigid faces of the school board, their eyes glinting with unyielding authority, their judgment like the bite of a predator searching for weakness. Inside, he knew he had a purpose in front of him, but the gnawing fear that his ideas would fall flat consumed him. If the administration rebuffed him, he would be left feeling not just like a fool, but a failure who jeopardized his students' chances. The memories of his own hardships rose like bile in his throat. Yet, as Jake glanced up, he saw a few students in the back. Their resigned expressions spoke volumes. They were the ones who needed hope. Just when he thought he could no longer bear the strain, a flicker of determination ignited in his chest. They needed to learn to survive their own predators, unwarranted poverty, unfair stereotypes. Could he give them the tools? The internal battle swirled, and he felt charged, but the day of reckoning loomed near. What if his students looked to him for guidance only to watch him crumble like ash under scrutiny? Jake closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. Could he dare to elevate their struggles to something noble, to be part of their survival story? Or would he become just another casualty, swallowed whole by the unforgiving system? The stakes were rising, and time was running out. The moment of decision hung heavy in the stillness of the classroom. Jake's heart raced as he grappled with the contours of his own ambition. An adrenaline-fueled thought surged. Perhaps he could harness the very essence of survival instincts that defined early humans, not through mere ideology, but through actionable strategies that could arm his students for their own battles. His fingers flew to the keyboard, and he typed furiously, a new lesson plan taking shape. Engaging projects, peer collaboration, creative problem-solving, the words flowed like a lifeline, casting hope into dark waters. As he outlined exercises that mirrored the instincts of adaptive hunters and gatherers, he envisioned a simulation where students could confront challenges, learn teamwork, and innovate their approach to a changing environment. Each idea sparked an exhilaration that stepped over the thresholds of his doubts. But the shadow of uncertainty loomed larger still. He could almost hear the familiar refrain of his mentor, a voice that created echoes of insecurity within him. Was this path too radical? What if he were met with resistance from those who were custodians of the existing order? But what nurtured doubt was quickly suffocated by a deeper understanding. Failure to act would only perpetuate a cycle of despair for his students. He found himself picturing the faces of those young minds, their experiences colored by fear and resignation, and it ignited a spark of rebellious determination. He was reminded again of early humans who solidified their survival not in isolation, but through the strength of their community. A new idea flickered. What if he framed this initiative not only as a lesson, but as a collective journey? He would beckon his students into a space where they weren't just passive consumers of knowledge, but empowered actors capable of shaping their own outcomes. As the clock ticked away, Jake's ambition crystallized into a clear vision. He imagined proposing a workshop, Surviving the New World, where students would tackle real-world problems, devising strategies that could elevate their skills beyond rote memorization. Each session would draw upon strengths inherent within them: creativity, resourcefulness, collaboration, and together they'd create a culture of shared learning and resilience. Before he lost the momentum of inspiration, he pressed save and stared at the lifeless classroom door. His pulse quickened at the thought of walking into the principal's office, momentarily paralyzed by his intrusive thoughts. Could he really present his idea, face potential scorn or mockery? He inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar heat of anxiety coil in his stomach. But if he didn't try, could he live with the dread of missed opportunities? Rising from his chair, he straightened his backbone and walked out of the classroom, each step deliberate and resolute. The hallway echoed with sounds that only sharpened his focus. No more lingering in the shadows of doubt. He would confront the administration armed with passion and a clear vision, pushing boundaries regardless of how stifling the system felt. As he approached the office, a revelation surged within him. He was not merely a teacher. He was an agent of change. The moment of truth loomed closer, and as he reached the doorknob, he likened it to the very act of early man stepping from shelter into the wild, embracing the unknown with all its dangers. The door swung open, and Jake stepped forward, the weight of his future hanging heavy in the air. Would he emerge victorious, or would he face the risks that punctuated this precarious journey? His heart raced faster as he called out, "I have an idea." The path was set, but the transformation had only just begun. The principal's office felt oddly claustrophobic, filled with the weight of unspoken expectations. Jake's heart pounded as he stood there, the stern gaze of Mrs. Howard fixated upon him. She sat behind her polished desk, a fortress of authority, arms crossed, waiting. But behind her documentation and her position, he could sense a flicker of curiosity. "Please go on," she invited, her tone cautious yet probing. "No, don't just go on," he thought, critical of himself. "Own this." He squared his shoulders, acknowledging the mental tension while anchoring himself in conviction. "I want to create a workshop titled Surviving the New World. It will empower students to engage with real-world challenges using the principles of adaptation survival. Much like our ancestors," he said, his voice steady despite the quaking inside. Mrs. Howard raised an eyebrow, the beginnings of a skeptical smile forming around her lips. "And what makes you think they need this kind of learning, Jake? Is there quantifiable evidence that suggests these techniques will benefit them academically?" The question cut deep. He had always viewed academic success as intertwined with personal growth. Yet, here he was, feeling as if he stood before an unforgiving jury. It's not just about grades. Students today face challenges that are often invisible: mental health issues, social pressures, uncertainty. Jake pressed. "We're preparing them for survival in many senses." A shift occurred in her expression, sparking a faint flame of interest. "What is your plan?" Mrs. Howard leaned forward slightly, intrigued. Jake took a breath and began outlining his ideas. Simulation activities that force collaborative problem-solving, scenarios where students would explore their creativity while integrating practical skills. With each point he made, he vividly painted the tapestry of his vision, each detail fueling his confidence further. He pictured the students seizing their own agency, resilience bouncing between them like sparks from a flame. Those are ambitious goals, but, she interrupted, how will you measure success? This isn't simply about running a class, but ensuring it's effective. What if they fail? The notion of failure jolted him. He hesitated for a moment, grappling with an avalanche of doubt. Then clarity struck like a lightning bolt. What if they fail? We all do. Failure is part of learning. It's an opportunity to adapt. The whole point of surviving the new world is that I'm teaching them that it's not about avoiding failure, but learning to rise from it. We can model resilience through experience. Mrs. Howard's gaze softened, the sharpness of skepticism fading slightly. You're speaking in abstract terms, Jake. It's easy to talk about resilience. Can you ground this in specifics? What will students walk away with? He nodded. Concrete skills, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and the ability to collaborate. Students will redesign their failures as stepping stones rather than dead ends. He emphasized, forcing his voice to steady. And what about resources? The usual bureaucracy might not be on your side for this, she interjected, her expressions again blending concern with intrigue. If we start small, with a pilot program, and display measurable outcomes, improve teamwork, engagement, perhaps even academic performance, I'll take the burden of proving its worth. Jake responded, the fire within igniting a tactical resolve. As they spoke, he sensed the atmosphere shifting. Each inquiry from Mrs. Howard felt less like criticism and more like a strategic engagement of ideas. With every back and forth, he was not merely defending his proposal. He was discovering hidden strengths within himself. The meeting closed with Mrs. Howard outlining steps for approval, but not without a reminder. This could face significant pushback. Be prepared to defend your idea thoroughly. You may not get uniform support. Jake nodded, understanding that this journey could not only redefine his students, but also reshape him as a leader. He left the office empowered, a burgeoning sense of purpose. Lifting each footstep down the hall in the days that followed, he developed new lesson materials, researched hands-on activities, and engaged with colleagues who might support him. But a gnawing thought gripped him. Was he truly ready to champion this initiative against potential opposition? Doubt and determination collided within him. As he prepared for the next school board meeting where he would present his refined proposal, he wondered just how far he was willing to go to defend this vision. The time had come to face the looming challenges, and, as he forged ahead, Jake couldn't shake the sense that he was on the brink of defining not just a teaching philosophy, but an essential part of his own identity. Jake's palms were slick with sweat as he stood backstage, listening to the murmur of voices in the auditorium. The dim lighting highlighted the anxiety etched across his features, and as he caught sight of the school board members filing in, his pulse quickened. This was at the culmination of weeks spent refining his vision and wrestling with the doubts that had plagued him since that initial meeting with Mrs. Howard. Taking a deep breath, he focused on the floor beneath him, grounding himself in the moment. It was more than just a presentation. It was an opportunity to assert his beliefs, to not only show what he wanted to teach, but to unveil who he really was in the process, a dedicated educator willing to challenge convention. When the time came, Jake strode to the podium, projecting a confidence he didn't fully feel. Facing the board members, he called upon the energy that had fueled his preparations. Thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to share my proposal for surviving the new world, a transformative workshop aimed at equipping our students with essential life skills. Jake detailed his carefully crafted plan, weaving personal anecdotes and vivid scenarios into his presentation. He took care to clarify that it wasn't merely a survival skills course, it was a journey through adversity, a pathway toward emotional literacy, collaborative problem-solving, and creative thinking. Each element painted a broader picture of resilience, one that echoed the challenges the students face daily, whether in their personal lives or academic experiences, that he noticed Mrs. Howard nodding, her earlier skepticism now replaced by interest. But as he proceeded with the finer details regarding assessment measures and pilot program logistics, Jake could sense the tension shift. Some board members were clearly unconvinced. He pressed forward, tackling their concern head-on. Failure is an inevitable part of growth. I want our students to embrace it, to learn and adapt, not to fear it, he stated passionately. He glimpsed a few head nods among the audience. Yet others remained impassive, their body language revealing a deep-rooted resistance to change. A board member interjected with a furrowed brow. Jake, with all due respect, how can we justify spending resources on something untested? This could divert funds from programs that already show success. The words pierced through his confidence, leaving a hollow feeling in the pit of his stomach. Perhaps more than resources, this was a battle for the very essence of educational philosophy. It was frighteningly personal. Taking a moment, he sought clarity within the chaos. I understand the concern, but wouldn't it be greater folly to continue preparing students for a world that no longer exists? We owe them the ability to thrive, not just academically, but as individuals. As he spoke, Jake could feel the gravity of his words sinking deeper, connecting with those who craved innovation over stagnation. Their eyes widened as they began to perceive the potential impact of his venture. With every exchange, he caught glimpses of his own evolving identity, not just as a teacher, but as a leader, as someone who dared to propose something different amid substantial pressure to conform. After the presentation, questions continued, each one peeling away layers of Jake's self-doubt, exposing his resolve and passion. He emerged from the meeting exhilarated and exhausted, grateful for the experience that had brought clarity to his purpose. Yet, even as he received tentative agreement on moving forward, an unsettling seed of anxiety remained. What if the approval came with conditions that would stifle his vision? What if the very essence of surviving the new world was compromised before it could truly begin? Jake realized that he was confronted not only with potential challenges outside himself, but with the deeper challenge of ensuring that his identity as an innovator was preserved through adversity. As the board adjourned, he felt a rush of determination coursing through him, aware that he needed to prepare. Not just for implementation, but for the resistance he might face in the days ahead. As he left the auditorium, Jake's mind swirled with lingering uncertainties and the exhilarating promise of transformation. He was ready to take a stand, but for the first time, he understood that this endeavor might redefine him in ways he had yet to comprehend. How far would he go to protect his vision? This question hung in the air, beckoning him forward and teasing the edges of his resolve. But one thing was clear, each step from this moment on would be significant, both for him and the students he aimed to inspire. Jake stepped out of the auditorium, the sound of applause still echoing in his ears, but it was distant, washed out by the tidal wave of uncertainty rushing over him. Anticipation coursed through him like a current, electrifying yet ominous. He found himself at a crossroads. The project had taken a step forward, yet he felt a chilling whisper of doubt creeping into his thoughts. As he walked down the empty corridor, his mind wrestled with the questions raised by the board members. He replayed their skeptical faces, the furrowed brows and crossed arms, each gesture a reminder of the battle between innovation and adherence to traditional methods. A knot tightened in his stomach. Could he really make them see the value in surviving the new world? A few days later, he was back at his desk, surrounded by student assignment papers, each one a reminder of the commitment he'd made to foster skill development. But the echo of the board meeting lingered, urging him to contemplate a deeper truth. The challenge was not merely about the approval or implementation of the program, but about how he could cultivate a culture of openness and resilience among students and faculty alike. Armed with a newfound sense of purpose, he meticulously crafted a comprehensive strategy. This wasn't just about proving himself in front of the board. It became about enriching educational experiences and preparing students for uncharted futures. With every detail he pinned down, Jake uncovered more of his own strengths. His ability to connect with young minds, his creativity in problem-solving, and his resilience in the face of opposition began to rally behind him like an army of supporters. As the days passed, he began holding formal sessions with fellow teachers, sharing snippets of his program while encouraging them to critique, challenge, and innovate. To his surprise, rather than dismissing him outright, a few colleagues started to engage genuinely. They explored the core concepts of emotional literacy and teamwork, iterating on methods that could seamlessly integrate into existing curricula. Yet, Jake still felt a pang of fear. What if the board's eventual decision turned his efforts futile? He had to anchor himself to something more than just the result of external validation. He sat down one evening with a journal, pouring out his thoughts, jotting down not merely strategies, but also affirmations of his teaching philosophy. Every entry seemed to bolster his resolve, a ritual confessing his commitment to growth, both for himself and for his students. As he began to develop his narrative within the school, he sought to measure progress in tangible ways rather than just waiting for approval from the higher-ups. He proposed a pilot workshop for a small group of eager students, focusing on adaptability and critical thinking. Days melded into weeks, and soon, the small classroom vibrated with an energy he hadn't felt before. Students were animated, engaged, and collaborating in ways that moved beyond textbook exams. Still, whispers of doubt lingered at the back of his mind. He would be presenting results to the school board soon, and part of him fretted over how easily they might dismiss it as merely anecdotal evidence. How could he encapsulate the transformative experience the workshop offered? What if he captured their attention with a presentation that combined raw data with genuine student testimonials? The thought brightened his focus. He could harness the voices of his students, their stories becoming powerful tools of persuasion. This was a moment to confront the board again, not just with statistics, but with palpable change, the kind that could ignite hearts as well as minds. The time had come to face his deepest uncertainties head-on and embody the very resilience he preached. But how would he galvanize the board to embrace a new educational frontier? Would they be ready for the transformation he envisioned? The answer seemed tantalizingly close, flickering in the distance like a lightsaber in a darkened room, but not yet within reach. Whatever awaited him at that impending meeting, Jake knew one thing. He was no longer the hesitant teacher, but a pioneer on the frontier of education, ready to defend the programs that could mold the leaders of tomorrow. Jake immersed himself in preparation for the upcoming board meeting, meticulously organizing his thoughts and materials. The room was a chaotic reflection of his mind, sticky notes plastered around his desk, illustrating an array of ideas and strategies he'd gathered over weeks. Each note was a fragment of a larger vision, one that promised to connect innovation with fundamental truths in education. His heart raced at the thought of facing the board again, not just to present statistics, but to demonstrate the awakening he'd witnessed in his students. They had transformed from passive participants into bold thinkers and collaborators. Their voices echoed in his mind, each student's narrative adding depth to the dry numbers he feared might dominate his presentation. He questioned how to frame their experiences as evidence of success. Would the board care about engagement and enthusiasm if it didn't come wrapped in quantifiable results? Driven by both resolve and anxiety, he decided to practice with a small group of trusted colleagues who had championed his initiative. They gathered in the faculty lounge, the air thick with aroma from the coffee pot, and he began his presentation. As he spoke, he watched for reactions, the furrowed brows, nodding heads, and moments of eye contact that signaled investment. Their feedback was invaluable. They asked pointed questions about how he would quantify success and retain student interest long-term. At times, he felt the burn of doubt, their inquiries poking at his insecurities. Yet, among the supportive critiques, he found sparks of inspiration. Jake adapted his approach, incorporating potential metrics for success into his narrative. He proposed tracking changes in classroom participation, collaboration levels, and even assessing emotional intelligence among students before and after the workshops. This structure created a framework that felt robust and credible. Days blurred into one another, and he forged ahead, practicing relentlessly. He spent every free hour refining not just the presentation slides, but also the story he needed to tell. It wasn't just about numbers, but about the relevance of this educational shift, the value it would bring to the students, and ultimately, the school's future. As he practiced solo in front of a mirror, he confronted his reflection, attempting to channel a confidence he struggled to embrace fully. As the date of the board meeting approached, Jake began contemplating the worst-case scenarios. What if they dismissed him again? What if they questioned his intentions and accused him of undermining traditional methods? He wrestled with that doubt, yet a voice inside him pushed back. His dedication to his students was his anchor. He pictured their faces eager, engaged, liberated from the confines of rote memorization, and drew strength from that image that on the night before the meeting, he sat with his journal again, reflecting on his journey. He wrote of the fears that gripped him, not just of the board's potential disapproval, but of his own self-doubt. There was no shame in seeking to innovate, he assured himself. Perhaps this was the very risk he needed to take to challenge the status quo. As dawn broke, casting soft light into his classroom, a wave of anticipation washed over him. Today had the potential to become a pivotal moment, not just for his career, but for the very nature of education at the school. Resilience coursed through him, intermingling with eagerness and apprehension. This was more than a presentation. It was his commitment to a vision that could reshape futures. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself as he stepped into the boardroom. The atmosphere buzzed with tension as the board members took their seats. Their expressions, once skeptical, now appeared inscrutable. This was it. Every workshop, every engaging discussion, and every ambitious goal had led to this moment. Could he turn their skepticism into support? But just as he was about to launch into his opening statement, a familiar voice interrupted from the corner. It was Sarah, the school's most unyielding board member, leaning back with an eyebrow raised. Before we dive into your presentation, Jake, there's something essential we need to address. The room thickened with expectation as Jake's heart sank. What revelation stood poised to confront him? Would this be his breakthrough or his downfall? Jake's mind raced, grappling with the weight of Sarah's interruption. Her tone, steeped in skepticism, sent a shiver down his spine. Was this the moment he had dreaded? He clenched his fists under the table, struggling to maintain composure as he met her piercing gaze. He sensed the board members shifting in their seats, curious about the impending revelation. Jake, Sarah continued, her voice steady but edged with challenge. I've heard rumblings around the faculty about the direction of your program. Some believe it could undermine our traditional methods. Each word felt like an arrow, aimed straight at his mission. Desperation flickered in Jake's chest, yet beneath it lay a growing determination. This was his defining moment, the chance to transform doubts into an opportunity to ignite a conversation. He chose his words carefully, weighing them with the gravity of the situation. Sarah, my initiative isn't about dismantling our traditional approaches. It's about enhancing them. Students today need skills beyond rote learning. The world is changing, and so must we. He knew this statement could either resonate with or alienate the board. The tension crackled in the air as Jake forged ahead, articulating his vision. Imagine a landscape where students collaborate, think critically, and engage deeply with material. We have the data that shows a dramatic increase in participation and enthusiasm among students when they actively engage in their learning. He stressed the key words, hoping to drive home the promise of innovation. As he spoke, Jake noticed flickers of intrigue in some of the board members' expressions. He acknowledged their hesitations, but pushed further, painting a vivid picture of student empowerment. Engagement isn't just a buzzword. It manifests through tangible metrics. I'm proposing to track participation rates and collaboration on projects to quantify our success. This initiative can coexist alongside traditional methods, enriching the overall educational experience. Jake's voice faltered slightly at the end, the weight of potential rejection still heavy on his shoulders. Would they embrace him, or would this moment seal his fate as someone who dared to deviate from established paths? "Jake, your enthusiasm is commendable," Sarah replied, her expression softening but still critical. "However, how can we trust that these changes will result in long-term benefits? It's a risk." Her doubt ignited a fire within him. "Every innovation carries risk," he countered, buoyed by a newfound clarity. "But it's vital to take calculated risks to foster environments where students thrive. I have witnessed this transformation firsthand. Imagine a school where every child feels valued and empowered to express themselves." He paused, scanning the room and gauging reactions. Some board members appeared contemplative, others skeptical. Yet Jake drew confidence from the eagerness of his students' previous interactions. Their progress, their excitement became his foundation. "Let us not forget, education goes beyond textbooks," he added, a glimmer of passion illuminating his stance. "It's about building resilient, adaptable citizens prepared for the future. I'm not just asking the board to invest in a program. I'm asking you to invest in our students' potential." Silence permeated the boardroom, creating an almost palpable tension as Sarah absorbed his words. For a moment, the world around Jake shrank to the exchange between him and Sarah, the weight of their opposing philosophies colliding. "And what if your initiative fails?" Sarah finally asked, her challenge echoing in the charged atmosphere. "What then, Jake? What assurances can you give us?" Jake felt his heart pound at that unanswered question, the culmination of all his fears surfacing. His mind raced, contemplating the stakes. "If I may, maybe that's the essence of innovation, learning from failures to forge new paths forward. This journey is not just mine. It's our collective responsibility to steer the future of education." Just then, a board member interrupted, a flicker of excitement shimmering in his gaze. "What if we viewed this as a pilot program? A way to test these strategies on a smaller scale before a full-scale rollout?" Jake's pulse quickened. This could be the turning point. "Absolutely," he exclaimed, fueled by the moment. "Let us start small, gather data, and assess the impact collaboratively." As the board members exchanged glances, Jake sensed the tide shifting, but knew the decision still hung in the delicate balance of their considerations. Would they see the potential of his vision, or was it too late? In the depths of his intuition, Jake recognized that this conversation was only the beginning. A deeper confrontation loomed ahead, one that could either harness or shatter his aspirations. The air in the boardroom grew thick with anticipation as new plans began to take shape. Jake noticed a glimmer of hope through the haze of uncertainty hanging over him, but he knew that this was just the first hurdle in a much greater race. Licensing the pilot program felt like a small victory, yet it was merely the tipping point for all he aimed to accomplish. "Let us hold off on making any decisions just yet," Sarah's voice cut through the air once more, though its edge seemed dulled. "We still need a solid framework for this pilot. I propose we assign a committee to further explore the feasibility." Jake felt a momentary twist in his stomach. The committee. Yet this reasoning was not lost on him. It mirrored his own desire for a structured approach to launch the initiative effectively. "A committee makes sense. I'd be eager to contribute and provide any data or materials you need," he replied, maintaining his momentum. But deep down, he wrestled with an unsettling fear. What if the committee suffocated his vision under procedural red tape? Was this what he had envisioned, a cumbersome process that stifled the innovation he sought? He took a breath, reminding himself that his intention was not to claw at the traditional methods being upheld, but to rethink them. For Jake knew that every great leap forward in education stemmed from examining the old ways through a new lens. He leaned into this newfound understanding, feeling more resolute. The discussions unfolded around him, board members exchanging ideas on implementation timelines and resource allocations. Each suggestion felt like a knowledge thread, weaving his vision closer to reality. Yet alongside his excitement was the tug of insecurity. How could he best translate this committee's decisions into actionable steps, ensuring his initiative remained at the forefront? As they wrapped up, Jake realized he had not only defended his vision, he had planted a seed among the board members. Their acknowledgement began to crystallize into tangible consensus. But what would happen when the meeting disbanded? "You've certainly opened eyes today," Jake chimed in another board member. "But an idea is only as good as its execution. You must ensure that the students' input is also factored into this process." That comment struck him. Students were the heart of his mission, and he had been so focused on appeasing the board that he momentarily forgot their vital role. What would they think of this restructuring? Would they even be willing to engage if they felt sidelined in crucial conversations? He knew then that part of his next mission was to forge pathways for student feedback insight, so crucial that it could help shape his program before it even launched. "Absolutely," Jake interjected. "I'm planning to create a student advisory board. By involving them directly, we can ensure that the program reflects their needs. I'd like to propose student-led focus groups to generate feedback on what they find engaging." As he spoke, the idea ignited a spark in his chest. This was a new direction, one where students would not just benefit from his initiative but own a part of it. Empowering them to voice their thoughts would transform the educational experience into a partnership. Sarah nodded thoughtfully, and the moment felt like an opening, a shared responsibility to nurture innovation together. Yet amidst this burgeoning realization, Jake grappled with another thought. With every step forward, the challenges loomed larger. What if Sarah, or others resistant to change, still undermined his intentions at every turn? They might appreciate the student voices, but would they respect them? "Let us reconvene in a week to discuss initial steps," Sarah concluded, sparking nervous excitement in Jake. He felt the pressure of time bearing down alongside the hope that flickered in momentum. As the board members rose to leave, urgency began to well within him. He needed to act now, to engage students at the school before the committee's plans became something other than what he envisioned. But within this rush to engage, uncertainty tugged at him. Could he trust the board to support this student-driven approach wholeheartedly? Jake's gaze traced the boardroom exit with uneasy anticipation. The next week would prove critical, not only in rallying student support, but also in ensuring that he safeguarded his vision against competing agendas. Time was slipping away. He took a deep breath, determined to embrace whatever lay ahead. This was his chance to redefine his path, one collaboration at a time. Would he successfully navigate the complexities now unfolding, or would the very system he sought to innovate trap him? In this moment, as Jake stared out of the boardroom window, the fluttering of uncertainty was just as loud as his invigorated sense of purpose. He had made strides today, but the real test and potential upheaval awaited him just around the corner. As the week unfolded, Jake immersed himself in his preparations, fueled by a singular thought. He had to amplify his vision by genuinely embracing student voices. He spent hours drafting a proposal for the Student Advisory Board, convinced that their insights could guide the initiative more effectively than any boardroom discussions ever could. The thrill of their potential inputs surged through him. It was the lifeline he needed to ensure the program sustained its innovative edge. However, that thrill was entwined with trepidation. Would the students be as enthusiastic as he hoped? Or would they dismiss his efforts as just another hollow initiative? Tension settled in his stomach as he recalled his own school years' hesitance to engage with administration, feeling that his voice would carry no weight. He needed to present this proposal as more than a simple project. It was essential to frame it as an opportunity for genuine collaboration. His plan was to hold a series of focus groups across different grades, inviting diverse perspectives. Yet, as he scribbled notes, doubts began to creep in. Were the students even interested in making their opinions known? More troubling, could he devise ways to ensure their insights would truly influence outcomes? He didn't want to treat their feedback as mere lip service, the BY Friday. He had organized an introductory meeting in the school library, hoping to attract students from varying grades. The space felt sterile, walls adorned with posters underlining school values which had long since lost their luster. Still, it was a fitting backdrop for a pivotal discussion, or so Jake hoped. As the students trickled in, he focused on their expressions, scanning for signs of enthusiasm or indifference. He cast an encouraging smile, attempting to radiate the passion that burned inside him. But when he began his presentation, the faces before him remained inscrutable. He shared his vision for the advisory board, emphasizing how their voices could shape their education. Eyes flickered away, some students exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of this. After his brief introduction, Jake opened the floor for questions and comments. What do you think about the idea of you guiding a new educational program? He ventured, gauging their reactions. A boy leaned back, arms crossed, a clear sign of disinterest. A girl in front shifted uncomfortably, as if waiting for someone else to break the silence. Then came a hesitant voice from the back. What isn't it for us? The question pierced through the awkward air. Jake felt the sting of honesty, a crucial reminder that, without real incentive, students might not care enough to engage. Great question, he responded, feeling the urgency of the moment. Engagement means you can shape things to fit your needs. You'll have an active role in crafting the curriculum, choosing projects, even having input on how classes are run. He saw a flicker of interest in a couple of faces, but it wasn't enough. The fight against apathy was going to be challenging. Realizing he had to dive deeper, he shifted his method. Let us brainstorm together. What changes would you like to see in your education? His tone grew more casual, inviting an open dialogue. Slowly, hemp began to rise. One student mentioned the need for more practical learning experiences, a relevant call to action. Another suggested incorporating technology in daily lessons, echoing sentiments Jake had believed himself. The conversation began to flow, with ideas bouncing back and forth. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. He sensed it. They were starting to see the potential impact of their involvement. Yet still loomed the challenge of trust. Behind that initial curiosity, Jake was acutely aware that he needed to ensure the students felt safe voicing dissenting opinions. Could he cultivate this space where raw honesty would flourish? Would the advisory board build a bridge or expose vulnerabilities? As the meeting drew to a close, he looked around at the group, their initial hesitance now transformed into a buzzing mixture of excitement and apprehension. He had accomplished a breakthrough. He had engaged the students. But that nagging thought lingered. Would the board members perceive their suggestions as vital contributions? Jake knew he hadn't yet faced the steepest part of this uphill climb. The committee loomed ahead. Their support was not guaranteed, and their respect would need to be earned. The hurried exit after the meeting prompted his racing thoughts. He would need to prepare to present their feedback to Sarah and the board. Was he ready for the reality that awaited him, the potential skepticism from the very board eager for results? How could he ensure that the energy sparked today didn't dwindle in the bureaucratic shadows? With his determination ignited, Jake walked out of the library with one resolute thought. This was merely the beginning. He was poised to initiate conversations that would challenge the status quo, but the greatest challenge lay in the road ahead. As he stepped into the fading daylight, he couldn't shake the dread of voices from the past whispering doubt. Who would he become as he navigated this uncertain terrain? As Jake stood in front of the school board a month later, confidence radiated from him like never before. Gone was the shy teacher filled with self-doubt. He had evolved into a formidable advocate for his students, ready to champion their voices and experiences. The pilot program, Surviving the New World, was no longer just an idea. It had transformed into a well-oiled machine, driven by student engagement and real-world applications. The results of the initial workshop had exceeded his expectations. Participation rates among students had soared, collaboration blossomed into measurable outputs, and the prevailing atmosphere in the school had shifted. Students, once resigned to the systematic grind, now approached learning with curiosity and fervor. Jake was not merely a facilitator anymore. He was the architect of a profound cultural change within the school. The board members scrutinized his presentation, but he was armed with tangible results. Each data point showed an increase in student motivation, measured improvements in emotional intelligence, and enhanced critical thinking skills. He presented student testimonials, highlighting experiences that came alive with stories of empowerment and adaptation. Every student in our program is not only achieving academically, Jake asserted, they are developing skills necessary for navigating their future, regardless of the challenges they face. The contemporary world demands resilience, adaptability, and creativity values we are instilling here. The room fell silent as Jake shared a powerful testimonial from one of his students, a young girl, Claire, who had previously struggled to find her voice in class. She spoke about how the emotional intelligence exercises had allowed her to articulate her fears, turning them into stepping stones for personal and academic growth. The program didn't just teach me to survive school, she said, looking into the camera with sincerity. It taught me how to thrive in life. Jake could see the board absorbing every word, their frowns relaxing into thoughtful expressions. It was an invaluable moment, a turning point where he felt not only recognized but validated. Visibly moved, one board member restrained a smile, while another leaned in, nodding with approval. "Jake," began Sarah, her demeanor unexpectedly warm, "it's apparent that you have built something meaningful here. However, I urge you to share more specific measures on how we'll track the continued success of this initiative moving forward." He responded without hesitation, having anticipated such inquiries. "We'll implement regular feedback loops from students and teachers, integrating their insights continually. Not only will we assess academic performance, but also emotional and social growth metrics, allowing us to adapt dynamically. Our journey doesn't end with this pilot. It evolves as we gain more insight from our community." In that instance, Jake was no longer the hesitant educator stifled by traditional methodologies. He had proven that innovation could coexist with established norms, a robust collaboration rather than an antagonistic clash. As applause echoed through the room after his presentation, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had overcome his own battles of fear and self-doubt, illustrating that by fostering an environment of inclusion and resilience, he could guide his students toward tangible success. His evolution from a teacher solely focused on achieving higher test scores to an architect of a transformative educational experience was not only evident to him, it was recognized by his peers and superiors alike. Jake stood tall as he received commendation from the board, not just for the program itself, but for how far he had come personally. "You've demonstrated more than just an initiative. You've exemplified a commitment to our students and their futures," a board member remarked, encapsulating the essence of his journey. With the pilot approved, Jake felt a surge of pride resonate within him. He had confronted his fears, faced opposition, and emerged not only as a leader, but as a change maker. Today marked the beginning of a wider movement, one that pushed forth the ideals of resilience and adaptability into the very fabric of education. As he stepped out of the boardroom, Jake reflected on how far he had come. No longer a relic lost in the shadows, he stood resolute, an agent of change, ready to continue pioneering paths for students who dared to dream. Their stories, their hopes, and their resilience would shape the educational landscape in ways he had once thought impossible. He looked at the bright hallways filled with students moving about, each with their aspirations sparkling in their eyes, and knew that he had achieved something lasting. He not only inspired his students, but became an embodiment of their potential indeed, a true survivor of the new world. Now, more than ever, this transformative journey needed to resonate beyond these walls. As he prepared to share the success with a wider community, he felt the power of his actions bubbling up. This was only just the beginning. Before he left the school, he took a moment to reflect on the importance of continued support for these transformative stories to flourish. You need to subscribe now to the channel to keep following these exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm, because every engagement counts. Comment below with your theories about Jake's journey and how he can inspire others. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Together, we can create waves of change where every story of triumph matters.